Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. You need to get to know Michael Schneider. It's not that easy, as he lives and works a world away running one of the largest retailers in Australia and New Zealand, home improvement retail powerhouse, Bunnings. But I'm doing my part. Michael was my very special guest recently at Retail Council of Canada's Store 2021 Thought Leadership Conference, so I thought it only appropriate to bring our conversation on his podcast. In fact, this is Michael's second time on the podcast, so we spent a bit of time catching up with current events, but then get right to the good stuff. How Bunnings is one of the most, if not the, respected and trusted brands in Australia. Of all brands. What principles, guidelines, guardrails are in place to achieve that kind of cohesion across all the departments, people, and communities they operate in? Let's hear from Michael now. Well, Michael, welcome to Store 2021. It's such a great way to wrap up an already full day of thought leadership. Welcome to the conference.
Thanks so much, Michael. I hope you're well.
Well, you and I have had the opportunity to meet in the before time. You visited in Toronto. I got the chance to learn all about you and all about Bunnings. Let's jump right in. Tell the folks at home all about Bunnings and how you go to market and yourself and your role there.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Well, Bunnings is Australia's leading home improvement and outdoor garden provider. We operate in the home improvement sector, much like Home Depot and Lowe's and Canadian Tire do in your part of the world, Michael. We've got close to 400 trading locations right across Australia and into New Zealand as well. And we employ close to 50,000 team members. Our revenue is sort of in the $16 to $17 billion sort of scale from an Australian dollar point of view. And I think we sort of sell everything that you can possibly imagine from, pretty much the front gate of your property to the very back fence. For me personally, I've been a career retailer. I've spent most of my working career in home improvement retail, discount retail, and variety store retail. But it's not where I started my career. I started out wanting to be a high school teacher, so that's what I went to the university to study. But found that the sort of lure of retail, really drew me in, and I think it is really the pace and the ability to work with customers, the ability to work with team members, and obviously amazing products. They're all pretty compelling things. So I've done lots of different roles in my time, from store management and regional management to work in HR, and then for the last 6 years, I've been the CEO of the Bunnings Group.
Well, this is a great opportunity to explore not just the fundamentals of retail strategy, but also what's happening in your market. And all the different countries and different regions have been managing through the COVID era in different ways, perhaps a little more open sometimes in New Zealand and Australia. But I have to think, for a population that's used to traveling, great international travelers, there's been a focus on the home, which is not unlike us here in Canada. Give us a sense of the COVID experience for you, the COVID world and consumers and your operations.
Yeah, certainly. I think as it has for pretty much everyone around the world, it's sort of turned everything that we thought was normal on its head. In March, April 2020, the Australian government made the decision to close its international borders to the rest of the world, and that meant that people couldn't come to Australia, but interestingly, Australians couldn't leave Australia either, or for very limited reasons. And it was very similar in New Zealand as well, certainly in the early period. So we've been experiencing a series of rolling lockdowns as we work towards vaccination targets of 70 and then 80% of the adult population being double vaccinated. And you're right, Michael, it meant that people really repositioned to working from home, educating from home, and doing so many things around the home. And like so many home improvement retailers right around the globe, we've seen this really significant increase for demand. And I really am interested to see whether long-term this represents a genuine structural shift in the way that sort of our industry operates. And I think as we go forward, there'll be more and more, flexible working certainly become, if it wasn't already an emerging theme along with technology before the pandemic, it's certainly very much the case now. And I think it's, really evident that people are going to spend a lot more time in their home. We've been educated that, home is probably the safest place you can be with your family. And we've really invested in making our homes very, very efficient from a workplace point of view, very, very efficient from, an energy consumption point of view. And I think certainly, a lot more comfortable given the significant amounts of time we're spending. So we've seen elevated, volumes in categories like gardening, as people have done more things to stay physically and mentally active. Clearly technology and office furniture and office fit out has been a really significant trend. But also I think, in categories like painting and wallpaper, where, our customers have really worked hard to personalise their space, has been really good. About 35% of our revenue, Michael, comes from, what I think, businesses like Depot call the pro customer, we call the trade customer. And that's, reflected a couple of things. One has been, people, remodeling and redeveloping their homes to accommodate the way that they're living and the way that they're working. But it also reflects, both in Australia and New Zealand, significant investments by federal governments into the housing and construction industry as a way of keeping the economy afloat, creating new jobs in the sector. And businesses like Bunnings and many others in Australia and New Zealand in the sector we operate have been beneficiaries of that.
So that the same kind of economic stimulus that we see around the world is to some degree benefiting the natural flow of the business. And for the folks listening who are particularly in the hardware section of the retail trade, are you seeing this kind of ebb and flow between the DIY and the do it for me, kind of that movement back and forth, as you said, a big pro business, trade business? Are you seeing that movement back and forth both before COVID and during and perhaps after?
I think the biggest thing we saw, Michael, was a significant shift to some of the online models. So we've had curbside, and we call it drive and collect. So customers drive into our car parks, and our team put product in the customers' in their car. We certainly saw elevated levels of that sort of online shopping, particularly during lockdowns when we've had restrictions on our stores being open. Our stores have been open in all jurisdictions in Australia and New Zealand right throughout the pandemic, but in really different ways. In some jurisdictions, we've been fully open, recognising that hardware is an essential retail business, and in other jurisdictions, a little bit more limited, with only being open for the trade or for a very narrow category of products that are deemed as super essential. We're in our winter down here in the southern hemisphere, so heating and hot water systems are products that sort of spring to mind that you need if they sort of burn out or weather events happen that damage a home. Obviously, people need to be able to make those repairs. As for that sort of ebb and flow, what we've seen is elevated levels across both categories. We have seen customers take on more and more DIY projects. I think one project will build confidence and leads into the next project, and I think that's been a great development for our business and the industry sector. There's also been a challenge around accessing trade, and when I think about larger scale construction projects, we've had Australia is a federation. We've got a number of different states and territories, and throughout the pandemic, we've had internal border closures as well. So the ability for me to travel from Melbourne to Sydney at the moment, for example, that's not possible because the border between Victoria, which is the state that I live in, and New South Wales, which is the state that Sydney's in, is actually closed. There's a significant Delta outbreak in New South Wales at the moment, so other states have closed their borders. So those border closures have led to limitations in access to trade, and that's what's really, I think, given the DIY customer a bit of a sort of a hurry along or encouragement, if you like, to take on some of the bigger projects that perhaps once upon a time they wouldn't do.
Well, I also like what we've talked about off mic about mental health, right? Because mental health is so important in this time at all times. But do it yourself. I've done a few things myself that maybe I wouldn't have had the gumption to go do myself, but I've done them, and there's a bit of pride there, and it takes up some of your time and things to do, and you have that pride in your house. It gets me to the question that I'm really interested around two things. But one is how you've been able to sustain and maintain a brand momentum well beyond the recognition of retail. You're not only one of the top recognized, regarded retail brands, you're one of the top regarded brands of all in Australia. How do you talk a bit about how you achieve that? And I guess I'm also more interested in how you maintain it, because getting there is one thing, keeping it, and you've kept it for a long time. How do you get your people motivated to kind of get that together and get that sense of community to achieve that kind of that trust and that brand recognition?
It is a really interesting question, Mike. Bunnings, I think it's 16 years in a row now we've been voted the most trusted retail brand in the country, and this year just passed, we were also recognised as the most iconic brand. Bunnings as a brand is 135 years old this year in the Australian market. We've been in New Zealand for over 20 years now. And our warehouse format, our first stores opened in 1994. So the warehouse format has been in Australia for quite some time as well. Not as much as North America, that's for sure, but certainly for a period of time. I think the way that we sort of build and win trust is by just trying to do all the little things right, if that makes sense. So, we want to have a really compelling offer for our customers. Our product has to be the right, product. It has to be a good assortment. So one of our strategies is to have, the widest range of home improvement and outdoor living products. We're really committed as an EDLP retailer to lowest price, so very disciplined around having low costs in the business, sourcing our product at the lowest cost, which clearly at the moment is a real challenge with cost of freight and certainly a sort of a significant desire for raw materials to sort of go into the products that we sell. But we work really hard to have an engaged and empowered team. And one of the real highlights for me, I guess, of the last 18 or so months is that we gave over 10,000 Australian and New Zealanders the opportunity for a new job during the pandemic. At a time where you couldn't fly an aeroplane, you couldn't serve on an aeroplane, hotels were closed, restaurants were closed. We were so busy that it gave us the opportunity to give people employment, and we understand the role that plays. Not only in the economy, but for those people themselves in putting food on their table and paying their bills. And our team has grown from sort of 40 or so thousand to just on 50,000, and that's been an amazing transformation in the business. It creates its own challenges around culture for sure, but we do everything we can to support and recognise our team. We've got great bonus programs, we've got great reward and recognition programs. A simple example of that is that, during extended periods of lockdown in markets like Victoria or around Melbourne, randomly we'll give team members a $100 Uber Eats voucher. That's a significant investment for a business of our size, with the workforce of our size. But, we do that for two things. One is to give, our team members a night of cooking at home, give them a bit of variety. But it also supports some of the smaller businesses in their communities, because obviously they can then go and purchase from them. And they're done to, I guess, surprise but recognise our team and show them that, we're really focused on that. We're really, really focused on safety. It's something that is so incredibly important to us. And you touched on mental health. We see safety as a 360 whole person model, where it's, heart, mind and body, if you like. And we've invested a lot into resilience and expressing gratitude for the things that are going right, so people do keep a positive spin. We really work hard to engage positively with government and regulators and our suppliers. So we've sort of, it is all those little things that I think, at the end of the day, have people sort of understand that Bunnings as a business is definitely a for-profit business. Don't get me wrong. We are very financially driven. We are very performance focused, but we believe we can do the right things, but more importantly, we believe we can do them in the right way. And I think that Bunnings will act as a business and engage as a brand in really different ways. One of the big topics in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same in Canada at the moment, is getting the community vaccinated and getting people who are maybe sitting on the fence when it comes to vaccination to at least go and speak to a doctor or a pharmacist to get an informed opinion, so they're not being guided by Dr. Google, and they make those really informed decisions. So we along with other Australian businesses have got paid advertising on TV and in the media, newspapers, social media, encouraging people to go and get vaccinated, or at least go and get information to support their choices around vaccination. And they're all the little things that we do as a business to build trust. And finally, I think the thing that I enjoy the most about our business is that when our customers think about Bunnings, they think about their local store. They're not seeing a 50,000 person organisation with 400 locations around Australia and New Zealand. They see their local Bunnings store, as their local hardware or home improvement store, and they know that store's doing things in its community. It's got team members going out when we can, of course, into the community, doing things that kids' schools, helping them set up, vegetable gardens and things like that. We have barbecues on the weekend at our stores for fundraising for local sporting teams and local community groups. So there's this real sense that, our team live in their local community. They raise their families in their local community. They send their kids to the local school. They play sport at the local sporting clubs. all those things are really important. So that connection starts at quite a granular level. And I think it's the sum of all those little things that people kind of go, yes, this is the Bunnings we see, or this is the Bunnings we feel. And as a part of that, it reflects on the sort of people who want to come and work in our business. So we recruit for culture. I think at the end of the day, selling the products we sell isn't hard. All the products that we sell, from timber or lumber to power gardening or power tools or anything like that, we can teach team members about those products and how they work and how they operate. All those things are really important. But if you haven't got the culture right, then you've got nowhere to go.
Well, let me pull on that cultural thread a little bit, because I want to understand your thinking as it's evolved over time. When I reflect back on the past 15, 20 years of retail strategy and execution, it's really been getting the data, locking down process, being refined, really real just-in-time kind of inventory management, those things that kind of collapse expenses. Have you started to pivot, or have you needed to pivot into agility? And if so, how do you change that culture, or at least imbue the culture with that sense of, yes, we still have to be locked down on what we're doing, but boy, agility is going to be pretty important now and foreseeably in the future. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, it's a really important part of our thinking, Michael. It would be a few years ago now, I'd say probably 2017, 2018. I took quite a lot of travel around your part of the world, around Europe, into Israel as well. All parts of the world, to sort of talk to businesses that had been making these transformations, because the Bunnings business has been a really successful model over a very long period of time. But there was certainly a sense of not set in our ways, but certainly very set on process and practice that was delivering very clear and very good outcomes. But
you had outstanding results. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you've had great results. I mean, if you look at your results, they go in one direction. So it's almost like culturally, the response would be, well, what's wrong? Why do we need to change? Things seem to be going pretty well. But I guess as the leader, you kind of have to see around the corner. Of course, COVID kind of introduced you to around the corner, unfortunately. Is that what your thinking was as well? Kind of see how I put change in place when things are going well?
Yeah, look, I think that's right, and I'm sure some of the people on today's session will be aware that back in 2016 we entered the UK and Irish markets with an acquisition of a business in the UK called Homebase. It was a period of time where things didn't go right for our business, and we exited that business in mid 2018. It wasn't the success we'd hoped it had been, and I think for a business that delivers the sort of results that you touched on, Michael, that was a moment where we had to stop and reflect and go, we do make mistakes, we do get things wrong, and there is a compelling need for change. I think most emblematic in that regard was the digital transformation in the business. I think for a long time, the business had a really strong sense of belief that, to some extent, Australia and home improvement retailing in Australia was a little bit immune from some of the digital changes and digital challenges that businesses around the world have been facing into. And it did take a lot of time to educate the team. But the changes that we made and the investments we've been making, when we hit COVID, and I think for all leaders, we've been told for years now that we need to be much more data aligned. Instinct-based leadership on its own isn't going to be the way to go forward. Just because you got 20 or 30 years of experience doesn't mean that you've got all the answers. I think that's very right. But what COVID's shown us is that we need to be able to move with incredible speed, incredible agility, but we do rely on really strong teamwork and that agility that you touched on, which we embarked on that journey. And as I said, did this sort of study trip to try and understand what businesses had done and the pitfalls that they'd sort of faced. We certainly found plenty of those ourselves, but it did open my eyes as a leader to the fact that we need to be changing, and we need to be changing at a rate that's much faster than at times I think feels comfortable, because circumstances will always catch you out. And I think the pandemic has shown us that. I genuinely hope it's a 1 in 100-year event, because navigating businesses through these sorts of times is pretty taxing, as I'm sure we can all attest to. But it has set us up to be a fitter, stronger, much more agile business. But what it's also done is it's sort of borne out why we've made some of the changes and the benefits. So people in our team who might have said, look, I'm not sure that Bunnings really needs to be making as much of an investment online, who were saying that, say, in 2018, 2019, are sitting here in 2021 going, thank goodness we did that, and I wish we might have gone faster. So it's sort of, it's helped cure anyone of any doubts about the importance of it, and we continue to sort of want to evolve the business in that sense, and it's certainly informed a lot of our thinking about our strategic agenda going forward.
Well, and as your leadership style changes, so does the composition of the people who work for you, right? I mean, different generations have different priorities. So have you needed, that was going to happen or was happening with or without a crisis like COVID? COVID kind of acts as this one mission, like everyone can align to one mission. But, you know, as you think about the people that you now hire, whether it's in store support or in the front lines, and as you think about, fortunately, you know, as the COVID era starts to wrap up over the next number of months, how are you thinking about managing the people that you have today in the current modern retail environment? We hear much talk around, remote work or hiring executives that are either off-site or maybe located somewhere else or come into the office less often. How are you thinking about your organizational structure, not just now, which is kind of an unusual time, but is it informing your thoughts moving forward?
Yes, it is something that occupies a lot of my time and a lot of my thinking, Michael. I think that first and foremost, I recognise that my role, and any CEO will understand this, is, you know, you're simply a relay runner in a relay race. You're taking the baton from someone, and at a point in time, you pass that baton on, and you hope that during your leg of the relay, you're doing good things, and you're setting your team up to win, not just 2 or 3 years down the track, but 10 or 20 years down the track. And as a part of that, you need to build a team that can, essentially replace you and build capability. And I think when I look at the Bunnings organisation in 2021, and I think about the Bunnings organisation I inherited in 2016, and I inherited a great business with incredible people in incredibly good shape. We're needing to develop and transform. We've got people doing jobs that we didn't have in our business.
Didn't exist
5 years ago, and the jobs themselves didn't exist. And being very candid, people will talk to me about jobs, particularly in some of the more technological or nuanced supply chain parts of our business, and I sort of kind of go, okay, that's interesting, and sort of wonder what they really, really do. And then you go away and spend the time to sort of learn a bit more and find out about it. But we've certainly put a lot of investment into digital capabilities. We now have a chief information officer. That wasn't a role that existed. We had someone running IT. But we've now got a function that's got digital, it's got data and analytics and data science and all the technology pieces, all in together. There's clearly been a shift globally around, environment and sustainability and governance or ESG. And, we've got people focused very heavily in those areas because they go so much to trust and reputation. And we touched on that earlier. So, whilst there's sort of new world or new age roles, there's also roles that are being created because they reflect where we're moving as a society and as a community. The one thing that hasn't changed, and I think is really important, is the bit that I touched on earlier, which is we recruit for culture. So, it is sometimes a little bit harder in those more technical roles, but we want to recruit people who like working with other people, who want to be part of a community. They want to be serving, we're either serving customers or we're serving the team who are serving the customers. And that sort of brings us to how we think about flexible working. We've learned through the pandemic that every job can be done from home. 2 or 3 years ago, I said, I'm not sure about payroll. I'm not sure about some of our graphic design work, where we need, specific types of machines to do the work that they do. But I think it was in the course of about a weekend when lockdown started hit, we worked out all those jobs could be
figured it out
from home real quick. We sorted those problems out really, really quickly. But I'm really conscious that our store teams, our distribution center teams, we have trade centers for our pro customer. We have manufacturing sites, manufacturing frames and trusses for people's homes. All those team members have to go to work to do their job. They can't do their jobs from home. They have to be there to serve the customer. They have to be there to move product around. And because we're a support center and we're supporting the team that support our customers or serve our customers, we've sort of said that if you think about a fortnight being 14 days, we'd love to see our team in our support centers, between sort of 4 and 8 days at least in that 14-day cycle. And we think about the 14-day cycle because for some of our team, working on a Saturday or a Sunday might be better because of their family circumstances. It's easier to find a car park in the office. All the facilities are there, and we're actually moving our national support centre, literally as we speak, our new support centre is being fitted out. And one of the upsides to the pandemic has been that commercial property space and the rental market has been turned on its head. And we were able to negotiate a really good deal on a new support facility for our national support centre here in Melbourne. And when we're able to go back into the office, that's where we'll be going. And it's very much precinct-based work. It's all built around agile ways of working. Team members can, work in all different parts of the building. They can work with the teams that they need to work with, but they're working in an environment that is certainly represents some of the very best now in terms of, workplace safety and post-COVID sorts of controls and measures. So we're going to be very fortunate that the team coming back in an environment that I think will really reassure them that they're going to be safe when they're at work, but they'll really want to be there, and still reflecting the focus we have on low cost. So, we don't have big offices and fancy boardrooms or things like that, but we've got a very fit for purpose facility for our team to work in.
So maintain an innovative culture, maintain productivity, which is probably not so bad I think the learnings of it. You could be productive over the long run, though. It decreases kind of that interaction or intersection, even between different departments, right? I'm sure that casual kind of interaction. I think we're all missing that a little bit. Last couple of questions. I want to talk about growth and growth strategy. Now you've got double-digit CAGR kind of numbers, so growth for you is maybe harder to come by than easier. How do you think about growth in the years to come?
Yeah, we think about it a couple of ways, Michael. Firstly, we sort of think about growing the market and then growing our participation in the market. So, we touched on what we think might be a bit of a structural shift around people in their homes. So certainly the interest and appetite for the home improvement market has grown. And, if we do the things that we think are right, then we earn the right to be chosen first by our customers, and they'll hopefully shop with us. We also think about growth, in terms of geography, and I touched on the fact that we thought about, offshore acquisitions and growth, and that was something that we learned was really difficult. And I wonder now, had we still held that asset, how it would have been managing a team on the other side of the world during a pandemic. Would have been really, really difficult. And the time zones, Australia is very un-time zone friendly, pretty much to the rest of the world. If you've ever travelled to this part of the globe, where our mornings are most other people's nighttime, so there are unique challenges around geographic changes. And we are a very English-speaking focused country, and I'm always envious when I travel overseas just how many people speak 2 or 3 or 4 languages. So growth offshore is a challenge, but there's ample growth within Australia and New Zealand. And our focus is on continuing to innovate and evolve the DIY offer, so we're really relevant, and we're doing a lot of work on how we use space in our stores from a productivity point of view, an assortment point of view, and a ranging point of view. And that's got all sorts of knock-ons into supply chain. But we've also got a really clear focus on rapidly accelerating that trade or pro business. As I said, 35% or so is trade or pro-based. Right. We'd love to see that as 50% of our business, but not because our DIY slows down, but because our trade business accelerates. And the last decade, we've seen double-digit growth in our trade business. We're making acquisitions in specialist channels to, I suppose, increase the share of the we call our trade vehicles, utes or utility vehicles. The share of the sort of toolbox in the ute. We'd love to see more and more of the products from our business going in there. So that's where that acquisition focus is based in part for trades. But we also want to increase the share of the whole build on a customer's home. And in some categories, we've got good share, and in other categories like electrical, in plumbing that's behind the wall, so everything we don't see when we go into our kitchen or bathroom, our market shares are very low, and we think we can do more there and participate more strongly in those categories. So our focus is very much on evolving in a really contemporary and effective way that DIY business, going really hard in the trade space. And we restructured the organisation in 2019 to accommodate that. So we've effectively got a consumer business and a commercial business. What we haven't done is duplicate costs. So we have one buying function, they buy for the whole business, but we've got product and brand specialists in the trade business who guide the buyers and the merchants' thinking around products that are relevant for the brand.
And no doubt different in-store experiences, right? Because the trade looks for very different things than the consumer looks. Well, listen, the only regret I have about our time together is we don't have more of it. because this is really fascinating, and we really appreciate you joining us. I wish it was in person, but we'll look forward to that perhaps in the future. But notwithstanding all that, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you for joining us at Store 2021. Fascinating to continue to learn about your business. I encourage anyone who's interested, which would be everyone, go to Bunnings and learn, because you do some really amazing things that are brand forward. So lots of lessons to be learned. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Michael, for the opportunity. Thanks everyone for listening. Bunnings.com.au is our website. You can look me up on LinkedIn. Really happy to share, and we're very happy to learn as always. And Michael, I wish we were in person. It was great when we were together, and I look forward to the opportunity of doing that again, hopefully in the not too distant future.
All right, from your lips to God's ears, as they would say. Until then, be safe, and wish you much continued success.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts, so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of LeBlanc Company Inc. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.